theyeshiva.net.
We're in the middle of the Maamar here. 1, 2, 3, 4. We learned the first 4 paragraphs last week. And now we're holding the paragraph that begins, Amnam inyan hatfilahu. Amnam inyan hatfilah. You see, that's the 5th paragraph. Amnam inyan hatfilahu avodah mamata l'mayla. The main point, one of the main points that was brought out last time in our previous shiur was that there are 2 pillars in Yiddishkeit, which we call Torah and Tefillah. And the difference between them, one of the differences is, one he says is defined as an avodah milmayla lamata, and one as an avodah milmata lamayla. Meaning, Torah is milmayla lamata, and Tefillah is milmata lamayla. And what does this mean? It's not just semantics, words. What's the difference if you say you start below and you go upwards, or you start above and you go downward? It's completely a different message, a different experience. Torah, by definition, is a taste of transcendence. That's what Torah is. Learning Torah is opening myself up, tuning in to the divine communication about life. It's the perspective of the Ribbono Shel Olam on life and on the world. In other words, it's essentially a taste from heaven. It's like manna. Man, lechem min hashamayim. Yes, a person can be in a different stage. This one can hear it, this one can't hear it. This one is open to it more, this one is open to it less. But essentially, any level of Torah, because there are infinite levels and layers of Torah, is really Hashem communicating. It's Hashem giving a shiur. It's Hashem presenting His take on life, to put it very simply. That's what Torah is. It's Hashem's chachma, it's Hashem's rotzen, it's His wisdom and His will, it's His perspective on the world. That's what it is. It's the perspective of the engineer, of the designer, of the creator. And He's sharing that with the human being. That's what Torah is. Of course, in Torah itself, there's different parts. There's Torah Shebeksav, there's Torah Shebal Peh. Torah Shebeksav is, so to speak, directly from heaven. There's absolutely no other participation. Min hashamayim hishmiacha eskolai, as the famous pasuk says. From heaven, He let you hear His voice. Torah Shebal Peh is the Torah that is revealed, or part of Torah Shebal Peh is a Torah that's revealed through the filter of the human brain. But what type of filter? Not a filter that is defined by the human brain. It's rather a filter where the Chachamim, tuned into the best of their ability to the Seichel HaTorah, to the methodology of Torah, to the formula of Torah, in order to be able to apply the halacha and to understand what does Torah say about this situation. What is the Ratzon and the Chachmas Hashem about this situation? And that's why the experience of receiving the Torah is defined by 2 words, Matan Torah, which the word Matan is a gift. Matan Torah is the giving of the Torah. It's a matana, it's a gift. Even though there were other parts. Why don't you call it the day of Kabbalah Satorah? So we sometimes use that word. We're going to Kabbalah Satorah. But in Davening, the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, the Vatiten Lanu Hashem Elokeinu Ba'ava, Moedim L'Sim Chagim Azmanim L'Sasin, L'Sim Chag HaShavuos, is Zman Matan Torah Seinu. That this time is defined, they could have said Zman Kabbalah's Torah Seinu. It's Zman Matan Torah Seinu. It's the time when our Torah was given. It's defined by a matana, a gift. And when we say that, it represents this concept. A gift is not something that you create, that you earned. It's not a wage. A wage is not a gift. A wage you owe me. I put in the work, and you're paying me for my work. Hopefully it's fair pay and fair work. The concept of a matana is that it's not reciprocating for something I have done for you. It may be generally that you want to reciprocate, you want to show appreciation. But the gift is not, oh, you did this, so now I owe you a gift. Then it's not a gift. The whole idea of a gift is the voluntary nature of it. It's coming out of volition. It's coming out of ratzon. Taka the Gemara says, if you wouldn't like the guy, you wouldn't give him a present. In other words, you're giving him a present because he does something for you, emes. But this particular matana is essentially something that's a demonstration of appreciation. It's not earned. And therefore, we call it Matan Torah, because even though the Jewish people did work for Matan Torah, they ran away from Egypt. We explained at length what it means to run away from Egypt. It's not a simple thing. They did not get entangled with shakla with debates and arguments with the Sitra Achira. That's a big thing. They started the Avodah of Sfiras HaOmer, 49 days, and because of that, we have every year Sfiras HaOmer. So there was preparation. It's not like Matan Torah came in a vacuum. It didn't come in a vacuum. Nonetheless, to take a nation of slaves and in 7 weeks transform them into a people that can hear Anochi Hashem Elokecha, the Rebbe says this is a complete unexpected jump. It's what we would call a quantum leap. This is not incremental growth. What makes a person ready to be able to hear the voice of God himself, of Atzmos, Anochi Hashem Elokecha? What? Maybe even 1,000 years wouldn't make you ready. At some point, there had to be a quantum leap. Certainly 7 weeks, even if it was 7 hard weeks of refinement, it was a quantum moment. This is a gift. And that's why Torah will reach every single place, even the lowest place, and it'll never be diluted. Torah speaks about liars. If you learn Gemara, Mishnayos Gemara, a lot of it deals with civil strife, civil justice, civil disputes. Reuven and Shimon are coming and they're both arguing and everybody says the money is mine. One of them is lying. And Torah is going to get involved in it. How do we prove who's wrong and who's right? When do you have to administer an oath? When do you say there's a migui? When don't you say there's a... So many different situations where we're dealing with possible thugs or thieves or liars. And the Torah speaks about it, the Torah addresses it, but it's always from a pristine perspective. It's the way Hashem looks at it. It's the way Hashem views it. It's the way Hashem tells us how to deal with it. So the Torah could come down into very low places, but wherever it is, it remains manna from heaven. And manna from heaven didn't have psilus. It had no excrement. There was no part of the man that the Jewish people had to eject from their body. Every part of the man could be integrated into the bloodstream and into the healthy organism of the Jewish people in the desert. The Gemara tells us in Yuma, I think Ayin Hey, right? Yuma Ayin Hey Amid Beis, that it's footnote 23, that the man lo'haya by psilus, it did not have any excrement. In other words, even though it became physical, it wasn't manna from heaven anymore. The manna descended and devolved. It went through a devolution and it became physical. It still retained its heavenly properties. So that even when I'm eating it and I'm digesting it, it becomes part of my blood and part of my flesh. Nonetheless, it still retains its purity, even as a physical entity, because it's essentially bread from heaven. And the same is true with Torah. Anywhere it goes, even when it comes down and it descends and it assumes incarnations that may be very similar to other systems of law, and it's dealing with lowly situations, people who are criminals and people who are lying. It's still, there's no psilus there. Everything is pure. And that's why he says, wherever it is, the Torah is poyel, a b'chinas bittul. And as he says, not a bittul ayesh, not a bittul atzmi, an essential bittul, because it's essentially a taste from transcendence. That's Torah. Now, we go into the other realm of Judaism, which becomes the main focus of this Maamar, which is tefillah, davening. And I would say that anybody who strives and yearns to be able to have a deeper and more authentic experience by davening and appreciate what it is, this Maamar is an absolute ingredient for that. Amnam inyan tefillah hu avodah milmata l'mayla. Tefillah is a different avodah. Tefillah is an avodah milmata l'mayla, not milmayla l'mata, which is a higher reality flowing downward or manifesting itself downward. But the avodah of tefillah is, no, it's milmata. It's somebody who is below l'mayla, striving to go upward. V'hainu zichuch hanivroyim lefi erkam. That's the key. Tefillah is all about refining every human being, the inner work of refinement according to who I am today, according to what I am. It's a completely different experience than Torah. In Torah, Hashem is talking to me. In Tefillah, I'm talking to Hashem. The Hesed Bezriel, the Chilik. And that makes a big difference. Now, which one is greater? That's not, we don't ask such questions. Each one is incredible. Torah has something that Tefillah will never have. Torah is, Hashem speaks to me. And what's my job? To listen. That's not easy, to listen. If I have static, if I have distractions, if I'm stuck, it's very hard to listen. That's why the Jews have to do Sfira Somer, they have to go out of Mitzrayim. Kivarachem, they can't get Torah in Egypt. But wherever I am, it's not enough. I never prepared myself enough. It's always Matan Torah. Hashem speaks to me. In Tefillah, Hashem listens to me. I speak to Hashem. In Torah, I bring myself, I show up to listen to Hashem. In Tefillah, Hashem shows up to listen to me. In Torah, I'm absorbing something that transcends me. In Tefillah, all I have is me, and I'm bringing myself. I'm offering myself. I'm bringing myself into the relationship. And therefore, the power of Tefillah is who I am today. That's what it is. Torah is about the bittul, is opening myself up to Hashem's message on life. The power of Tefillah is bringing myself into the relationship. So what's the whole inyan of Tefillah? Zichuch hanevrayim lefi erkam. It's the zichuch, it's the refinement. It's working with the person according to who he is, according to who she is. And that's why even the highest level of Tefillah is always bittul hayesh and not bittul atzmi. There's two states of bittul. They will become clear later, which he already mentioned earlier by Torah. One is called bittul atzmi, one is called bittul hayesh. Bittul atzmi means that the whole etzem, the very core of a metzius, becomes completely nullified and subsumed in divine infinity. Bittul hayesh means that the I becomes aligned with Hashem. But it's not that there's no I anymore. The I becomes a reflection of Hashem. So he says by Torah, Torah everywhere is a bittul atzmi, and Tefillah everywhere in the highest level is bittul hayesh. In other words, Torah, even when it comes down to the lowest place, it creates bittul atzmi, because it's essentially lechem and hashamayim. And Tefillah, even when it reaches the highest place, is always bittul hayesh, not bittul atzmi. The definitions are so subtle and so refined and so rich. This is the dictionary of the Balatanya. You know, he wrote a dictionary. It's not, you have Sforim, they explain concepts. They say Chidushim. The Alter Rebbe wrote a dictionary. There's words that he introduced into the vocabulary of Pnimiyus HaTorah, of Yiddishkeit, that allows you to speak about concepts that resonate in the essence of our soul, but you need words for them. So this is the dictionary of the Balatanya, and one of the powerful words is Bittul Hayesh and Bittul Atzmi. Bittul Hayesh and Bittul Atzmi. Torah is Melmayla Lamat. Even in the lowest rung of the ladder, it's still Bittul Atzmi. Tefillah is Melmata Lamayla. Even in the highest rung of the ladder, it's still Bittul Hayesh. Because Tefillah is, I bring myself into the relationship. That's what Tefillah is. Tefillah is, Ich reitze meibrisht. I'm speaking to Hashem. Torah, Hashem speaks to me. Tehine tefillah hi avodah. We all know that tefillah is defined in avodah. That's as avodah. Avodah means service. K'moshe Kasuv, the pasuk says, "Va'avadatem es Hashem Elokeichem." You should serve Hashem. Or the pasuk says in Eikev, this is in V'hayim Shemaya, the second section of Shema, this week's parsha. Ula avdai b'chol avavchem. You should serve him with all your heart. V'amar Razal, the Gemara says in Maseches Tainis in the beginning, Ezei avodah shebalev zu tefillah. What does it mean to serve him b'chol avavchem with all your heart? How do you serve Hashem with your heart? What does this mean? So the Gemara says, Ezei avodah shebalev. What's the avodah that relates to the heart? B'chol avavchem. This is what tefillah is. And the Rambam in the beginning of Hilchas Tefillah uses these psukim. This is the source for the mitzvah of tefillah. It says, Ula avdai b'chol avavchem. You should serve Hashem with your heart. Just like there's a mitzvah to put on tefillin, there's a mitzvah to wear tzitzis, there's a mitzvah to keep Shabbos, and there's a mitzvah to believe in Hashem or know that Hashem exists. And there's another 248 positive mitzvahs, whether it is counting the carbon omer or bringing a carbon musaf on Rosh Chodesh, whatever the mitzvah is, or giving tzedakah to a poor person, there's another mitzvah to serve Hashem with your heart. Ula avdai b'chol avavchem va'avadetem es Hashem Elokeichem. And the Rambam says these are the psukim that define the mitzvah of tefillah. This is the mitzvah of tefillah. It's avodah shebalev, an avodah of the heart. Now, what do we mean here? What's avodah? What does it mean avodah of the heart? So he says there's two words here. Harei avodah miloshen oides avodim. What does the word avodah mean? This is fascinating. The word avodah, we say work. Telech la'avodah. In Hebrew they say, lech la'avodah. Go to work. Yeah. Eved. Eved is a slave, right? Avodah is servitude, work. Not avodah. But what's the real shayrish of the word avodah? So in Torah, the Balatanya says in Torah Parshas Mishpatim that the shayrish of the word avodah comes from one of the malachas of Shabbos. One of the 39 malachas of Shabbos is, you remember, hama'abed. Mem ayin beis dalad. What's hama'abed? A tanner. Somebody who takes the hide of an animal, the skin of an animal, the epidermis of the cow, let's say, and you want to develop it into parchment, or you want to develop it into another leather item, whether it's a coat or a pair of shoes. It's leather. So this leather, to transform the hide into leather is very, very intricate. It requires intricate labor and work. And that's really the definition of the word ma'abed. Ma'abed, mem ayin beis daled, is tannery. The work of the tanner is one of the labors that are forbidden on Shabbos. One of the 39 malachas forbidden on Shabbos. Taking the oir, the skin, the hide of an animal, and refining it, because it takes a lot of avodah. After removing the hair, now you have to work it out. Various chemicals have to be used until it's ultimately transformed into leather that can be used for tefillin or can be used lahavdil for shoes. Harei avodah miloshen oiros avudim. The kashem sheba oiros avudim loichem oir gas b'yoyse uma'arbetenim azoy filat shenasaroy liyas lavush. Says words in Yiddish here, because the Yiddish captures the soul of the idea. Just like when you're working out, a tanner takes he takes the hide that is essentially dense and brute. You have to really work it out. You have to refine it, then refine it, then refine it until it becomes worthy to be turned into a human garment. That's why avodas Hashem is called avodah from the word ma'abed. And which part of avodah Hashem? Particularly tefillah. Tefillah is called avodah. Every mitzvah is an avodah, but tefillah is called avodah. Avodah shebalev zui tefillah. The mitzvah of tefillah is called in Torah avodah. No other mitzvah is called in Torah then. Not the mitzvah of learning Torah, not the mitzvah of giving tzedakah, not the mitzvah of celebrating Shabbos or shaking a lulav or blowing shofar. The mitzvah that's called avodah is one mitzvah, tefillah. Avodah shebalev zui tefillah. Why? Because it's mamish like a tanner. Tannery. What does it mean? I'm taking very brute skin, very brute hide, and working with it so heavily and so intensely until it's transformed into a human garment. This defines tefillah. What's tefillah? Tefillah is all about me showing up into the relationship. It's about me working on myself, refining myself. Ula avdai. I have to take my oir, I have to take my metzias and work with it, refine it, Find the potential that exists in it, the light that's there. So that's why even when tefillah is a climb upward, and you already reached the highest rung in the ladder, so you would expect here Torah and tefillah should meet. Tefillah always remains bittul hayesh, not bittul atzmi. Because the whole function of tefillah is not bittul atzmi. The function of tefillah is not the I becoming silent in order to listen to the thou, which is Torah. The whole avodah of tefillah is working with that I, working with me, working with my existence. Tefillah is about that there is a mitzias of a person who's doing the avodah. It's like saying, I want to do ma'abed, but the should be batal b'mitzias. If the is batal b'mitzias, there's no ma'abed. He's like the skin. The skin needs avodah. The skin needs the tannery. The skin needs to be refined. The person needs the avodah. It's one nekuda. When we speak avodah, you could speak about it in physical terms, ma'abed and hilchas Shabbos, which is talking about the skin of an animal. Here we're talking about tefillah. Who's the skin? The skin is the person. In Zohar, we're sometimes called mishchet chivya, the skin of the snake. So even when I reach the highest rung, it's a state of bittul hayesh, which is yesh misha batal. There's somebody who's aligned with infinity. It's not like Torah, which is a bittul b'metzias, a bittul atzmi, which means the whole core of the I is subsumed and nullified within the infinite thou of Hashem. So Torah is bittul atzmi. Why? Because it's Hashem speaking to the world. It's Hashem speaking to the person. So even the lowest level of Torah, even when Torah reaches its lowest level and deals with the lowest situations, it always retains its bittul atzmi. Tefillah is the opposite. Tefillah is the person showing up in the relationship. So even when I reach the highest level of tefillah, it's always I'm showing up. It's about what I bring. It's about my limitations. That's the value of tefillah. The value of tefillah is not that I forget myself. The value of tefillah is that I work on myself, that it's about who I am. And therefore, in the highest level of tefillah is always bittul hayesh. V'oidza is even deeper. The gam hamadrega chinailas shebetfillah. Shebebchenes bittul b'metzias. Harei ze nikre b'shem bittul b'metzias. And ak legabe hamadregas atachtoinas shebetfillah. Avol be'emes ein ze ele bittul hayesh ve'ein ze bittul atzmi k'mei bittul de Torah. Even when we speak about tefillah in terms of bittul b'metzias, which means the highest level of tefillah, where the I becomes completely silent in the presence of the thou, it's called bittul b'metzias relative to the lower levels of tefillah. But it's really still bittul hayesh. It's never like Torah. That's the mila of Torah on one level and the mila of tefillah on another level. Each one has a special contribution. Torah is the ability for me to completely suspend myself because it's not about me. It's Hashem talking to me. I'm listening. That's what Torah is. Torah is a taste of transcendence, a taste of the divine perspective. And that's important for a person to hear. We have a mitzvah v'hagisa b'yayim v'layla. A Jew has to use every opportunity, every free moment to learn Torah. V'hagisa b'yayim v'layla. Today we're going to start learning Rambam Hilchas Talmud Torah. You'll see how the Rambam describes the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Tefillah is a very different avodah. Tefillah is what? Tefillah is Hashem is listening to me. I'm talking to Hashem. What does it mean I'm talking to Hashem? It's not just physically I'm using words and saying, Hashem, I need this, Hashem, I need this. It's much deeper than that. It's the part of the relationship where God asks me, who are you? What are you dealing with? All of Tefillah is about, so to speak, talking about where I am in this connection. I'm bringing myself into the relationship with you. So who I am, where I am, what I'm dealing with, what my situation is, what my circumstances are, what my challenges are, what my struggles are, become essential to the avodah of tefillah. It's avodah shebelev zu tefillah. I'm trying to elevate myself. I'm trying to work on myself. If I ignore that, it's not tefillah. The whole inyan of tefillah is Ibud Oiris. What's Ibud Oiris? The Oir needs a transformation. It's the Zichuch of the Nivra. And therefore, on every level of tefillah, there's a yesh mishabatel. That's what tefillah is tuning into. Tefillah is me bringing myself into the relationship. And me bringing myself into the relationship means I have to be completely honest, completely vulnerable, completely ready to look at every single facet of myself, of my personality, of my characteristics, of my godly soul and my animal soul. To be able to align it with Torah, to be able to align it with infinity. He says even the highest levels of tefillah, the highest level, which is l'chayra bittul b'metzias, as we will see, still, l'gabi Torah, it's an inyan of bittul hayesh. To use different words a little bit, in life there's two experiences. And this is what we define as mulmayla lamata, mulmata lamayla. There's an experience of mulmayla lamata. Basically, imagine someone has an experience that completely overwhelms him. It startles me. It just sweeps me off the ground and has me soaring away. It catches me off guard to the point that I can lose my breath as I'm mesmerized and melting away in the ecstasy of this experience at this moment. It's extremely powerful. We sometimes have such a moment in life. But as refreshing and as powerful as that is, it's not about me. It's something else that has overtaken me, that has lifted me up. That's what we call mulmayla lamata. And who I am at that moment is irrelevant. Sometimes you could be present at an experience, you could be present at an event, and you hear things that are extremely moving, extremely powerful, and you take them in. And the power is that it was not about me. It was about something that completely transcends me, that I was privy to watch or hear or listen or absorb or experience. That's a mashal for the concept of Torah. Tefillah is a very opposite concept. Tefillah is the concept of milmata lamayla. All I have is the mata. That's my baseline. That's what I'm beginning with. All I have to bring here is me. And who is me? Me with everything that's me. Everything that's me. What do they say? The good and the bad and the ugly and the beautiful and the holy and the mundane and the healthy and the dysfunctional. Every part of my brain, every part of my heart, every part of my soul. Every facet of me. That's what I'm bringing. It's Momata. The baseline starts right here below with who I am. That's what I have. That's what I have. Heilach, harei shel chalafanecha. Come to Hashem and I say, here. This is yours, I am here. And who's the I? The I is whatever that I looks like. That I could be very, very unrefined, can have elements of it that are extremely unrefined. And the deeper I'm going in tefillah, the higher I'm climbing more and I'm climbing more and I'm climbing more and I'm climbing more. Because even when you reach the highest rung, by definition, it's a bittul hayesh. Because what's the concept of tefillah? Concept of tefillah is I'm bringing my I into the relationship, into the experience. I'm working with myself. I'm refining myself. And because of that, tefillah has a system. It's a journey. And the journey is what the Maamar is going to begin to address. What is the journey of davening? Tefillah doesn't have one section. It has quite a few sections because it's a journey. It's a journey of climbing a ladder. And I start off on the bottom rung and I begin the climb. Essentially, tefillah is a daily exercise routine. A very intense exercise routine, if you're up for it. An exercise routine, we have exercise routines that exercise and challenge you to flex every muscle in your body. Stretches that affect your head and your torso and your heart, your cardio, all the way down to the lowest components of your organism. Tefillah, in the same way, is essentially stretching. Exercise, that's what it is. It's a very intense system of spiritual Pilates and stretching lahavdil, where every part of my soul, every part of my personality gets stretched. And what's the idea of stretching? Stretching is to reveal what's in it, to release the tension, to remove the blockages, to open up the flow, the circulatory flow, right? To create more vibrancy, to create a better circulation, a better respiratory system. All this is the biological system. Same is true in our inner system, our spiritual system. So tefillah is that very intense daily exercise that's there to really touch every single part of my soul, every single part of my personality. And the first thing we have to understand is, it's not, we look at davening, even a good davening. I put on my talis, I put on my tefillin, in the case of a man or a woman, I open up my siddur, a mechfar. So this person has a little more kavanah, this person has a little less kavanah, this person thinks a little bit about Hashem, this person is daydreaming, this person does it in 10 minutes, this person does it in a half an hour, this person does it in an hour. This one davens with a me, this one davens with a chiddush, this one says every word, this one is very bored, this one checks the phone, this one doesn't. All important things, not to check the phone and to have kavanah. What we're going to understand here is, it's far, the opportunity of tefillah is far more rich than that. It's really a daily, extraordinary exercise routine that's been gifted to every single one of us in a life of true self-development and alignment. Because tefillah is milmata l'mayla, so therefore the system of tefillah is also a system of milmata l'mayla. The whole system of tefillah is a system of ascending from lower to higher. The Balatanya says in Likutei Torah that tefillah is a sulam, it's a ladder. And Yaakov Avinu dreams of the ladder. You remember the dream? The ladder is standing on the ground, but its top reaches heaven. The Zohar says that the ladder had a few rungs. The Zohar says that this sulam is the sulam of tzloises, the sulam of tefillah. Tefillah is a ladder. What's a ladder? The ladder, I can't go to the top rung. I first climb the lowest rung. And then I climb until I reach Roshim Magia Shemaima. So there's a seder of Aliyah Milmata. Where does it start? Mutzav Arza. And that's what tefillah is. The definition of tefillah is Sulam Mutzav Arza V'Roshim Magia Shemaima. It's a ladder. And the ladder begins on the ground. It begins on earth. It doesn't begin in heaven. Torah begins in heaven. Hashem throws down a ladder from heaven. It begins from heaven. Tefillah doesn't begin from heaven. Tefillah begins from earth. And it's a ladder that goes up. And Roshai, the top, is Magia HaShamayma. La'aschalas HaTefillah, what's the beginning of davening? According to Nusach Svard, this is the opening of Tefillah. According to Nusach Ashkenaz, it's said right after Baruch Sha'amar, close to the opening of Tefillah. It's a pasuk in Tehillim. Hoidu la'avaya kiru b'shmoi, heidiu v'amim aliloisav, shiru loi, zamru loi, sichu b'chol nefloisav, hishalelu b'shem kodshay, yismach leiv mavakshi Hashem. What's the translation of these words? Hoidu la'Hashem literally means thank Hashem, call out His name, and allow the nations to know His schemes, His genius. So he says, Shehi Yaidah Klolas Bilvad. The opening of davening is with the word hoidu. What does hoidu mean? Hoidu means a general sense of gratitude and a general sense of submission. Like hoidah, to be moide, to submit, acquiesce. V'yesh hoidah klolis yosim. So the truth is, there's already a hoidu before hoidu, which is even more general. V'hi hoidah, the Modeh Ani. And this is the first word a Jew says in the morning when he or she wakes up, which is Modeh Ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayim shechazarta b'nishmasi b'chem l'rabba munasecha. So the first words are Modeh Ani. I am grateful. I am thankful. Or the term Modeh here is not only gratefulness, gratitude, but Modeh from the word like Moedim chachamim l'Reb Meir. I submit, I surrender, I acquiesce. Like I'm Modeh, somebody says he's Modeh on what he did, he confesses, or he acknowledges. Or sometimes you'll say, I'm Modeh to you, I agree with you, I surrender my opinion to your opinion. The miyad becoming mishnasa. A moment the Jew wakes up from his slumber, lifnei netilas yadayim, even before you wash your hands. Kasher yesh adayin shiyuri hatumah rashi etz ba'isav. When there is still remainder of spiritual impurity on the tip of a person's fingers, which is the reason why we do netilas yadayim, we wash our hands in the morning. When the person sleeps, the hand can touch different parts of the body. And there's a ruach hatumah, there's a spirit of impurity that also can descend on the person because there is a diminishment of life during our sleep, besides the physical idea of the hands touching different parts of the body. So when we wake up in the morning, our neshama comes back, the tumah leaves, but it still remains on the tip of the fingers. Plus, the first reason, the fingers may have touched certain parts of the body. So what do we do the first thing? We wash our hands, netilas yadayim. And as the halacha says, we shouldn't walk Dalarama 6 or 8 feet without netilas yadayim, which is why most Jews bring the kvart or the shissel, some water near the bed, so we wash our hands near the bed. But even before we wash our hands, we say Modeh Ani. You don't wait till you wash your hands. The moment the Jew wakes up, you say Modeh Ani lefanecha. Hu oimer Modeh Ani chuli rabba munasach. Even though he's before washing his hands, there's still tumah on me. Because a Jew always has a soul, and the soul is a part of Hashem. It's a chelik elakamimal. There's the famous word from the Baal Shem Tov, that when you grab a little bit of the etzem, you grabbed all of it. When it comes to essence, something that is real essence, it's connected to the core of reality, a little bit, a part, and the whole is the same thing. Any part of it that you grab, it's like you grab the whole thing. It's not compartmentalized. It's not like you grab 10%, 20%. If you're dealing with something that's not etzem, so you could take 5%, you could take 10%, you could take 50%. For example, somebody's giving a shiur. I think this is a good example. You'll say, I understood 5%, I understood 10%, I understood 50%, I understood 100%. That's a fair statement. And it's important to know how much you understood, how much you retained. Yeah. A birthday cake, I got 5% of the cake. A pizza pie, you may have taken a half of it, you may have, hopefully not. You may have taken a third of it, still hopefully not. You may have taken an eighth of it. Okay. That's everything, whether it's physical or spiritual or intellectual, everything in life, it can be compartmentalized, right? And you have a part or you have the whole. Just like, the business world runs like this, right? You have investors and each of them gets a part of the cake, a part of the pie. Let's say each one has 10% of shares, so 10 people own this enterprise. Everyone owns 10%, or one owns 50%. That's all until you're dealing with etzem. When you're dealing with etzem, etzem means something that is part of the core of reality. Here, there's no 10%. If you have a little bit of it, you have everything. Because etzem is indivisible. And because it's indivisible, either you have everything or you have nothing. But if you have one part of it, you have every part of it. Because the etzem is manifested in every single part, because essentially there's no parts. If you want a good example for this, today in biology, we have an example for these words of the Baal Shem Tov, and that's DNA. The DNA. When your type is DNA, you don't say, oh, it's a DNA in one cell. There's 70 trillion cells, or 50 trillion cells, so we really have nothing. It's not like you have 1% even. You have 1 of 70 trillion. It's a joke. You have nothing. You have everything. You have everything. You hear Chevra, very reicha mashal. In the genome of the single cell, you have the blueprint for 70 trillion cells. It's a fascinating thing because it's etzem. DNA is etzem. It's the nucleus of the cell. It's the etzem. It's the core of the human, of the physiological, of the human composition. It's the nucleus. It's the etzem. We're talking here etzem within the physical world. within the physical microscopic world, even though I can't see it with my naked eye. But with the tools that we developed and we discovered in the 1950s, the DNA, we have a gewaldige marshal for this nekud of the Baal Shem Tov. Etzem, once you touch etzem, kshata toifes bechelkoi, ata toifes bekula. You got it all. You mamish got it all. Now, and let's go back to our shir. This one got 5%, this one got 10%, this one got 20%. That's all because you didn't get the etzem. The moment you got the etzem, there's no 5% anymore. You got it all. In other words, if you touch the etzem of it, you have everything. There's somebody who listens to the shir every day for a few years already. I mean, whenever we give a shir, and I said this person listens to it. This person once told me that it was so true, very, very accurate, that essentially you don't need more than one Maamar for your whole life. Because every single Maamar has everything you have to know for your whole life. I once heard from the Rabbi YY Khan, Shlita. He was once giving us a shir, or fabringing, I don't remember, and he said, it says in Pirkei Avos in the 5th Perek, V'haloi b'maimer echad yochel lehibares. So Chassidim used to say, mit ein Maamar kemen b'shafen werden. With one Maamar, you can recreate yourself. So he said, then really in life, you only need one Maamar. If your toif is the etzem of it, then you have it all. If you're not toif is the etzem of it, okay, then you have one Maamar. If you get to the DNA level, ata toif is bekule, because again, etzem is indivisible. So it's not like I got 1% and you got 10% and he got 30% and she got 60%. That's not an inyan atzmi. An inyan atzmi means it's something that's indivisible. It's a core quintessential reality. It's pshittus. It's undefined by chambers, by percentages. It can't be cut into pieces. It's essentially one. And because it's essentially one, if I got a piece of it, I got everything of it. When your toif is the DNA of the Maamar, your toif is everything. And then the B'yoel said, but to understand one Maamar, you have to learn another 1,000 Maamar. You only need one Maamar. That's all you need. But if you want to understand one Maamar, you have to learn another 1,000 Maamar. But why do you have to learn another 1,000 Maamar? Not because you need another 1,000 Maamar. To understand this Maamar. To be toif is the etzem of this Maamar, you have to learn 1,000 Maamar. So the Rebbe says this. A Jew wakes up in the morning, you have tumah on your fingers, you didn't wash your hands, l'chayda. Before you say Modeh Ani, you should wash your hands. In fact, l'halacha, why do we say Modeh Ani how can we say Modeh Ani before we wash our hands? You're not supposed to say any brachas. The answer is because there's no name of Hashem. Later, we say Hashem's name. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher yatzar. Eloi kai neshama shenasat b'ta'orehi. Baruch atah Hashem hamachzeh neshamas levgara mesim. We say Hashem's name. You're not allowed to say Hashem's name with tumah. So you wash your hands first. Modeh Ani lefanecha. We don't say Hashem's name. We say Modeh Ani lefanecha, to you. Melech chai v'kayim. There's no name of Hashem. We refer to him, but without calling him by name. So therefore you could say it even with tumah. That's taka the halacha. Why we say Modeh Ani without Hashem's name, because there's tumah. But what's the havana? Why shouldn't we wash our hands before Modeh Ani? So the Rebbe says because a Jew wakes up, even if there's tumah, he has a neshama, or she has a neshama. And the neshama is a chelik elokamimal. It's a piece of Hashem. But can there be a piece of Hashem? Hashem has pieces. Chelik elokamimal. Chelik elokamimal is a pasuk, an expression in Iyov. But in all the svarim of Kabbalah, and already before Kabbalah, I think the Ramban already, and many other Rishonim and Mekubalim use it to describe the neshama of a person. It's a chelik elokam. But how could it be a part of Hashem? There was a great Jewish philosopher. His name was Reb Menashe ben Yisrael. He was also a very big social activist. You ever heard of Menashe ben Yisrael? He lived in Amsterdam, and he is the one who got Cromwell in England to allow the Jews to return to Great Britain after their expulsion. He had a very interesting way how he did it. It's not for now. Anyway, he has a philosophic work. It's called, I think, Nishmas Yisrael. His name was Reb Menashe ben Yisrael. Nishmas Yisrael. So over there, he criticizes very heavily all the Kabbalists who use the word chelik elokam imal. How can you divide Hashem? Chelik, a piece of Hashem. Of course, this is not a philosophical term, it's a Kabbalistic term, it's a mystical term. What does Chelik Elikami Mal mean? That's actually what it means. Of course you can divide Hashem into parts. But ha'etzem kshatatayf is b'chelek, hatatayf is b'kulei. The chiddush of a neshama is that it's a chelik elikan. Therefore, if it's a chelik, it's everything. Because kshatatayf is b'miktzas minetzem hatatayf is b'kulei. Hini mitzadzehu oimer Modeh Ani lefanecha. And therefore, at that moment, the Jew could say, Modeh Ani lefanecha she hayda klalas bilvad. This is a general hayda, a general recognition of a relationship. She'ein ze shaykh lepnimiyus klal. It's not yet internalized, it's not yet developed. It's the moment I wake up. It's like a very general and essential relationship. V'hine yesh ma'ila yiseda b'ayda zu shahayda bitlu be'etzem hanefesh liyosh she'ena shayach adayin la'asaga v'eschalkus de'koiches p'nimim. There's a gewaldike ma'ila in Modeh Ani because it's something that affects the essence of your soul, because the person is not yet in a place of comprehension, of categorization, of dealing with their individual faculties. You just woke up. This we say even before Birchas HaShachar. What's Birchas HaShachar? Listen to how he defines Birchas HaShachar. Hischalkus HaKoiches. What's Birchas HaShachar? Birchas is you categorizing your faculties. What's Birchas HaShachar? You go through Birchas HaShachar. You know, part of the richness here is it teaches us how to be attentive to what we're doing. We all say brachas in the morning. Mizak, you know, it's another thing you have to read. Birchas HaShachar is really categorizing your systems. It's like anatomy. You know, you have the study of anatomy, of how the body works, every single system, every artery, every tissue, every part, the 9 system of the body. Birchas HaShachar is that. You're categorizing and you're identifying, what he says, hischalkus hakoiches. You're categorizing your koiches, your gifts, your resources, the systems that the Rebbeinu Shalom created in your body. I know this different orders and different nuschayas, but the brachas are the same. Each bracha is celebrating and accentuating another koyach. There's a system, there's categories. First thing you say is he gives the rooster wisdom to distinguish between day and night. Next, Pekei Chivrim. He's doing the nusach of the Arizal. Pekei Chivrim is he opens the eyes of the blind, the gift of sight, the ability of vision. Don't take that for granted. Shu inyan asiyas hakelim. This is all about the construction of vessels. In other words, it's identifying the unique vessel, the unique structure that every part of the body and the human life has, which we thank Hashem for. Modeh Ani is before that. I just woke up. I didn't categorize myself yet. I'm not into the systems. I did not yet identify the individual koiches, the individual faculties and characteristics of the soul and of the body. In a way, such a type of acknowledgement encompasses the whole person from head to toe in the identical fashion. Once again, the bittul comes from a place of etzem, and etzem is in the toe just like it's in the head. I go back to my mashal of DNA. If you want to extract DNA from the person, you have to go into the brain? No, you can go to the saliva. You can go to a strand of hair. You can go to the toe on the bottom of the foot. You say, come on, what are you going to know from the toe? What are you going to know from the toe? Go to the brain, go to the heart, go to the kidneys, go to the lungs, go to vital organs, not an etzem. When it comes to etzem, when it comes to DNA, you can extract the genome from any cell in any single part of the body. From the highest to the lowest, from the most vital organ to what would seem not a very consequential part of the body. Certainly my hair, you can cut, my saliva, what is it? But if it's part of your living organism, mitzad the etzem is in the foot and in the head in the same way. So when we're talking about later in davening, in brachas hashachar, here there's already a beginning of categorization. Modeh Ani lefanecha is the etzem, and the etzem is a chelik elekami mal, and the etzem shatatoif is bechelka, tatoif is bekulei. When you touch that, the moment you wake up, it's beyond division, beyond compartmentalization, beyond internalization into the individual character of the person. What is it? It's a hidah klolis. It's an essential recognition and a commitment of a relationship. Modeh Ani lefanecha. Who am I? I am divine. V'gam l'mayla bittul zeh magia b'atzmusay. Just like it touches the etzem of the Jew, it touches also the etzem of Hashem, because they always parallel each other. We say, Modeh Ani lefanecha. She'einu omer shum shem ela lefanecha belvad lefanecha miloshen pnimiyus. Shu pnimiyus ain't sof de leisnamis b'shum shem u'b'shum ois u'b'shum kaitz klal. That's why we say Modeh Ani lefanecha. I thank you. I'm grateful to you. We don't say Hashem's name. We don't say Modeh Ani le'Elokim, Modeh Ani le'Elokam, Modeh Ani le'Hashem. No name, you. And the word lefanecha is from the word pnimius, panim. I'm grateful to you. Fanecha is your face, your pnimius, your inside, your core. In other words, the core of infinity, which cannot be manifested in any name and in any letter, and not even in a kaitz. A kaitz is the little line on top of a letter. Like if you look at the yud, there's a little line on top of the yud, not even that. It's the essence of Hashem, which doesn't have a name. All I could say is lefanecha, it's your essence. I don't have a name for it. A name means it's expressed, it's manifested in some letters. It's not manifested, it's the etzem. Because just like Modeh Ani comes from the etzem of the Jew, it reaches the etzem of Hashem. And over there's no chalakim, there's no details. Halachically, that's why you're allowed to say Modeh Ani before you wash your hands. Why? Because you're not mentioning Hashem's name. So who are you speaking to? You're speaking to Atzmos, the core. And over there's no tumah. There can only be tumah in the kaiches pnimim. In other words, there can only be impurity the way I process myself to myself. In the core, there's no tumah, because the core is always one with the essence. And in the essence, there's no divisibility. So if you got it all. And if you don't got it, you don't got any of it. So Modeh Ani is the Jew wakes up in the morning, and in that place of etzem, there's no tumah. You'll say, but you're tameh. Tumah can affect only lower levels of consciousness. In other words, the way I experience myself, there could be tumah, there could be toxicity, there could be impurity, there could be anxiety, there can be stress. When I go into the core essence, there's no tumah. If there's no tumah, so then you say it even before Netilas Yadayim, because over there's no tumah. Halachically, we say Modeh Ani before Netilas Yadayim because it doesn't have Hashem's name. On a deeper level, we say Modeh Ani before Netilas Yadayim because we're dealing with Atzmos, the Atzm of the person and the Atzm of Hashem, and there's no tumah. Ach afal piked beinyanim hashayachim legiluyim harei zeh yida klolos belvad she'ena shayachas lapnimius ve'ena lachana gduma letfila belvad. But that's only true in the world of etzem. In the world of giluyim, giluyim is the world of consciousness, the world where things are revealed and manifested. Modeh Ani is only a hida klolos. It's a general, all-encompassing relationship, but it's not shayach to the pnimius, meaning it's not really internalized into my daily processes. And therefore, it's a beginning, it's an introduction to tefillah. The person still has to bring it down and work through my whole being, which happens later in davening. So there's a system. So we start off Hoidu Lashem, but before the Hoidu, there's still another Hoidu. That's the first words, Modeh Ani, and that's even before Netilas Yadayim. Then begins the system of climbing the ladder. We're going to resume Be'ezer Hashem this shir on Monday morning, 7:30 a.m. I'm going to take some questions now for a few minutes. We'll just announce the schedule. Be'ezer Hashem today at 11. There's going to be a shir Rambam. We're starting a new section, Hilchas Talmud Torah Perek Aleph. Please join us 11 o'clock. You can watch it live or watch the replay. Tonight, 9 o'clock p.m. we are going to continue and complete Be'ezer Hashem, a special Siyum Maseches Shabbos. Yesterday we discussed the halachic aspects of it. Tonight we're going to finish that and go to the spiritual aspects of the conclusion of Maseches Shabbos. That's tonight, Thursday night, 9 o'clock p.m. Tomorrow morning, Friday, 11 o'clock, we will have our Shir Rambam as well. So, let's go to some questions, if there are. Can you define and give examples of Bittul Hayesh and Bittul B'Metzias? Be'ezer Hashem, we will do that, but we're not holding there yet. We mentioned it, but we'll see later and it'll become clear what's the difference of Bittul Hayesh and Bittul B'Metzias. The general difference is, without getting into an arichis, without getting into elaboration, is bittul b'metzias is that the core of the I is subsumed in infinity. In other words, the bittul is my whole metzias. My whole metzias is nothing but the divine. Bittul ayesh is I align my I with infinity. And it's two completely different stages in Avodas Hashem. Great question. Saying Tehillim, is it Torah or is it Tefillah? It's a gewaldige question. On one level, it would seem that Tehillim is Tefillah, but Tehillim is also one of the 24 Sfarim of Torah Shebeksav, right? And the Gemara says that David HaMelech asked that saying Tehillim should be like Negoyim and Alas. It should be like learning some of the most complex, intricate aspects of Torah. The truth is that all of Tefillah and Torah are synthesized constantly, because Tefillah has in it a lot of parts of Torah, right? A lot of the Tefillah is filled with psukim of Torah, so it's part of Torah. So to make this clear, demarcation in the sand between Torah and Tefillah would also be inaccurate. So Tefillah has an element of, Tehillim has an element of Tefillah in it, and it certainly has an element of Torah in it as well. I learned from Rabbi Vichnan, Olav HaShalom, Rosh Hashiva of Tiferes Bachurim in Morristown, and the Rav of Tzemach Tzedek in Monsey for many years, that if one comes late to a minyan, there are two opinions as to what to do. The first, practiced by many, and brought in Shulchan Aruch, including in Shulchan Aruch Harav, is to jump over parts of the Siddur to catch up with the minyan and daven Shemona Esrei with them, because you want to have Tefillah B'tzibur. There's another perspective, and that, he told me, is the minig of Chabad, and it regards Tefillah as a ladder. We start from the beginning and we go through the many levels step by step, answering, of course, wherever possible according to the minyan, but we don't want to skip. And this would explain why. A child is a chelik. When we say chelik elikam mimal, the way I understand it is like a child with a father. Is that true? A child is an essential part of both parents. He has the genetic code of mami and tati, the Y chromosome and the X chromosome. He has the essence of both in combination, just as each parent is the essence of both of their parents, the grandparents, and so on, all the way back to our fathers and mothers, Adam and Chava, who were created by Hashem. So this really means that we are one with all previous generations, because if I have the etzem of my father and mother, and they have the etzem of their father and their mother, it goes all the way back to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, or Bilhah and Zilpah, and all the way back to Adam Arishan. And that's what it means, you're a chelik. So does that mean chelik elikam mimal as well? It's a beautiful comment and a great mashal. In fact, you're right, because in Tanya chapter 2, this is the mashal that the Baal Tanya gives to explain a chelik elikam mimal. He says, like a child who's a chelik, a part of his tati. And what does it mean, part? It doesn't mean that a child, God forbid, takes away a part of the father, right? Like it's an amputation. No, of course not. It means that the child is a separate and distinct entity, but as a distinct entity, if you go back to the core, to the genetic makeup of this child, to the genetic code of this child, what are you going to find? You're going to find an inheritance of the father and the mother. And that's what really chelik means. And the same is true with a neshama. We say chelik elikam mimal. Doesn't mean it's a part of Hashem. Hashem is not split and divisible into parts. But what it does mean is a neshama becomes distinct, like a child that's born. A child is not the father and not the mother. We are not our children. Our children are not ours, even though it feels that way sometimes. But they're two separate beings. A child is a child, and a father is a father, and a mother is a mother. Nonetheless, we still say a child is an embodiment of the etzem. The etzem of the mother and the father comes out in the child, and that etzem will be given over to his child or her child for future generations. And the same is true with a neshama. It's a chelik elikam mimal. This also brings out another very rich point, and that is that all of the Jewish people from the beginning of history are really one etzem. In other words, when you go back to the place of etzem, we're completely one. The generation that stands now, that lives today, is the generation that stood by Har Sinai. It's the same generation that left Mitzrayim. It's the same generation that built the first Beis HaMikdash. It's the same generation that built the second Beis HaMikdash. It's the same generation that authored the Mishnayos and the Gemara in the 2nd century and the 5th century after the Common Era. It's the same generation. Yes, we're different in terms of where we live and how we live and the milieu and the currents of history and the climate of history and what we look like and what our behaviors are and what type of technology we have and the fact that we're learning through Zoom or through the yeshiva.net, etc. There's quite plenty of differences. But nonetheless, on a level of etzem, it's the same diet, it's the same generation. There's a one Metzius that spans all of history. And when you get to that place of reality, there's a oneness. And you can't take a chelik of it. You can't say, oh, I'm dealing with one generation of Jews. There's no such a thing. If you're dealing with an etzem, you're dealing with all of history. And if you want to understand, if you get this, you'll understand that real Gedolei Yisrael, in other words, true Jewish leaders, people who understood this and lived this, they understood there's no such a thing you impact one generation of Jews. It doesn't work that way. You impact one generation of Jews if you're not dealing with etzem. The moment you're dealing with etzem, you impact all of Jewish history. The past and the present and also the future. In biology, we have also something called epigenetics. We have the concept of intergenerational trauma. Trauma can be transferred through genes. It was never thought so. Genes could transfer, what color my hair should be, what color eyes I should be, and my metabolism, and my physique, and my height, and every other detail of my body. But trauma is a mental space. Trauma is a process of life. It also becomes part of the genetic code. Meruba midatayva. We speak about the neshama going over from generation to generations. Every Jew has a chelik elokam imal. What if his father was an atheist, his Zayda was an atheist, his Zayda was an atheist, all the way back to Karl Marx. Trotsky has grandchildren today. I met a granddaughter of Trotsky in Pittsburgh, and there's a grandson of Trotsky living in the Yeshuvim in Eretz Yisrael. And he has the same fire like his grandfather. His grandfather used the fire to destroy the world. But the fire is there. The chelik elokam imal is there, even if it's very concealed. So you say, but his father was an atheist, his grandfather, his great-grandfather. They didn't even want to identify as Jews. In this nekuda, it's an inyan atzmi. It's a concept of essence. And essence is indivisible. Yeah, beautiful mashal and beautiful ha'ara. Okay, the next question. If the etzem is really achieved in the Modeh Ani prayer, why do we need the rest of the prayers? Is the rest of the prayers to get us to Modeh Ani? It's a profound question. The real answer is the rest of the prayers to get us back to Modeh Ani in a way that is holistic and penetrating and all-encompassing. Because we don't live on the state of Modeh Ani. We live in a world of systems and categorizations. And there's my daily routines and my daily behavior and everything that's happening in my brain. So I want to be able to link the Modeh Ani and connect it and align all parts of my personality and all parts of my life's experiences to create that harmony. So really, we go away from Modeh Ani in order to come back to Modeh Ani. There's klal, prat, uklal. It begins with klal, with oneness, etzem. It goes into prat. Prat is going into all the details, and then there's klal, which is going back to etzem. There's chachma, there's bina, and there's das. Chachma is klal, bina is prat, and das is the klal that comes after. If you remember the Maamar of Rabbi Hillel last summer. That's what he said here, that Modeh Ani, because it's the etzem, it didn't permeate the koiches pratim. In other words, binyanim hashayachim legiluyim, it's not shayach to pnimiyus. Modeh Ani is pnimiyus, but it's the etzem. In terms of giluyim is how I experience my life. Modeh Ani remains abstract, it remains transcendent. And that's why it's only an introduction for tefillah. As we will see in the continuation of the Maamar, which is going to go through the whole ladder of davening. Be'ezer Hashem, have a wonderful day.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net. shop.theyeshiva.net/donate.